Welcome back to Face the Nation. There are just over 6 weeks until the midterm elections this November, and for a look at the state of play and what voters are saying, we'd like to welcome a pair of familiar faces to the broadcast. Anthony Salvanto is the CBS News Director of Elections and Surveys, and he has brand new Battleground Tracker polling results for us this morning. And Ed O'Keefe is a political correspondent for CBS News. Ed spent some time talking to voters in Las Vegas this week. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Anthony, I'll start with you, and let's start at the House. Everybody wants to know, are Democrats going to take control of the House? What do the numbers say?
Well, they're in position to as of now. So we've got our estimate that would have them at 224 seats if the election were held today. There's a margin of error on that, though, and it's 12 seats, or about 5% of the whole House. And there are scenarios, plausible scenarios, under which the Republicans get to see some Democratic gains, but hang on, where the Republicans hang on. One of the things that strikes me underneath those numbers in these battleground districts, House districts that we surveyed, is that a remarkable 75% of people say that the economy is good nationally, that the economy is good in their area, but they're not voting for the Republicans. They're not voting for the party in power because they don't like the way the country is going. They don't like the direction of the country. And that split, that difference, usually say, well, you know, if the economy is good, the party in power wins. That split is remarkable. And it really sort of underpins why the Republicans aren't in a stronger position right now.
Did you find that sentiment in your group?
We did. We talked to 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats, and 3 of those 4 essentially say, yeah, the economy is in great shape, but can't necessarily support the Republican candidate, don't necessarily like the direction President Trump is taking us. You've got 2 competitive House races in the Vegas area, a big Senate race and a governor's race. Politics is top of mind. And, you know, one guy told us he's seeing $20 more thanks to the tax cut. Others say, you know, I've got a better job than I did 2 years ago. So, of course, the economy is doing great. But they have concerns about the way the president's running the country, or the fact that maybe Republicans aren't doing more to sort of stand counter to the president. Therefore, they're open for change.
I want to get to the president and his role in this in a second, Anthony. Is there any other, or take us inside those numbers on the House, or who are the groups we should be paying attention to and what's moving them?
Well, besides those, the economy's not enough voters. There's another one that everybody should watch, and that's the potential new voters coming into this. The Democrats' chances hinge on these folks. It's about 17% of everybody who tells us they're going to show up. Well, look, in midterms, less than half of people usually show up. So the Democrats need to change that equation. These folks have not voted in 2010. They didn't vote in 2014, the last 2 midterms. And they are favoring the Democrats by 15 points right now in the poll. Without them, the Democrats, frankly, do not win the House if they don't show up, because they're just barely even among everybody else, those habitual voters.
Ed, were the people you talked to ready to go out and vote, or are they still even weighing whether they'll even get to the...
They are definitely voting. What I thought was interesting, and I think we see this in all sorts of races across the country, is they don't necessarily like their options. You have a Republican incumbent, Dean Heller, running against a Democratic Congresswoman, Jackie Rosen, in Nevada. Everyone had heard of them. Nobody was really jazzed about either of them. And so I think that may be an outlier in some cases across the country, where you've seen these races with new candidates, new faces that are really drawing a lot of support, a lot of small dollar donations. Nevada isn't necessarily a place seeing that, at least in its Senate race.
Anthony, let's talk quickly about the president. So is he motivating Democrats to turn out who don't like him? Or does he have a connection with Republican voters that connection is sometimes not there for a president and that first midterm election after they've been elected?
It's both, and they offset. One of the things that brings Democrats' enthusiasm up to match Republicans, and there really isn't an enthusiasm gap now, is this potentially angry Democrat who says that if the Republicans hang on to the House, they'll feel angry. And those folks are much more motivated to turn out and vote this year than people who say they'd just be disappointed. So that's he's clearly a motivating factor, at least for them.
Ed, I want to ask you, but you talked to the focus group about the Kavanaugh nomination. Let's take a look at what you heard.
It's fair game if it happened, and I think it should be investigated. I had mixed feelings about that because I felt, okay, none of us are the person that we were in high school. But on the other hand, it was very important to my husband and myself when we raised our child, to our son, to tell him that no means no. And you respect women, you don't abuse women, you don't, when a woman says no, they don't. So I think it says a lot about their character.
Jim, how about you?
So I think that the issue with Brett Kavanaugh is that as a judge and as a justice, he's going to be ruling on sexual assault cases. So we need to know about this because maybe he secretly doesn't think that sexual assault is a problem, and that might infect his rulings. Or maybe he'll be really hard on sexual assault defendants, and that'll overcompensate, and that'll skew his rulings. So either way, this could impair his fairness as a judge, and I think we need to know about that.
Lisa?
I think the operative word there is fair. Mr. Kavanaugh has been investigated ever since he was with the Bush administration. When you're appointed as a judge, you are investigated by the FBI. They go talk to your high school friends, everybody, knee deep. And the fact that this never came out in any of these prior situations, and now it comes out 30 years later in circumstances that seem a little bit off kilter, is suspect to me.
James, how about you?
I think she definitely needs to be heard out, and I think it's something that everybody needs to hear both sides of the story.
Dr. Ford has suggested that the FBI should have to formally investigate this. The Senate, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee say, no, we'll handle this ourselves. We are a committee that can look at somebody's background and determine this. Does it matter to you?
Yes, the FBI should be involved. One, they're more competent at investigations. They have more tools available to them to do it. And one point that Jim brought up that I really hadn't thought about it, but he's right. We need to know how that's going to affect him. Is it going to prejudice him one way or the other when he's making rulings in the future? Point as to why it wasn't brought up in the past. That's not necessarily something women want to talk about. It's not easy to talk about. And if you think back, and you're probably too young to remember, but I was around when the Anita Hill issue came up, and she was not treated well or nicely or any of that. So I think somebody now would have second thoughts about actually coming forward and saying anything.
He has been investigated by the FBI previously, and I don't know that bringing them in now, for an FBI investigation makes a lot of sense. I think it's too late for the FBI, frankly.
These allegations coming up now versus all these other times he's been investigated and had background checks. I mean, I think you can't ignore the momentum of the Me Too movement right now, and that might have played a factor in sort of giving her
The support that she needs.
For articulate voices, what are your numbers showing you?
Hard partisan splits on whether or not he ought to be confirmed. Just Republicans in favor, Democrats opposed, but also on whether there should be an FBI investigation. Also hard partisan splits, just a bare majority, 53% saying that there ought to be. Very high numbers on too soon to say as well. People who are just sort of tuning into this now and saying, let's wait and see what happens this week.
We'll be tuning in this week. Anthony, Ed, thanks so much.